The room felt suffocating, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on the three of us like an unrelenting tide. The corporate office, now a battlefield, bore witness to the unfolding drama. I stood there, gripping the evidence that had consumed my every waking thought, a collection of truths that would shatter the fragile facade of our lives. Lisa, my wife, was seated across the table, her eyes a mixture of fear and desperation. It pained me to see her, the woman I had trusted so completely, revealing her vulnerability in the face of undeniable proof. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as she clasped them together, an unspoken plea for understanding hanging in the air. Yet I wasn't here for understanding. Not anymore. "What is this, David?" she asked, her voice cracking under the strain, eyes darting to Michael, her lover, standing beside her. His arrogance, which I had once mistaken for confidence, now seemed hollow. The smooth-talking charmer was crumbling under the evidence laid bare before him. The messages, the photos, the unguarded moments he had foolishly thought were secret. I felt a cold satisfaction in watching him falter, in seeing the cracks in his demeanor widen. I had waited for this moment, planned it meticulously, and now the pieces were falling into place. "This," I replied, my voice steady, laced with an icy resolve, "is the truth you tried so hard to hide." I laid the documents on the table, a testament to their betrayal. Lisa's eyes brimmed with tears, and she reached out, her vulnerability almost breaking through the fortress I had built around my heart. "David, please," she began, her voice a cocktail of regret and desperation. She wanted my forgiveness, perhaps even a return to the life we once shared, but I was past the point of no return. Her pleas were echoes in an empty room, unable to penetrate the barrier of betrayal she had erected with her deceit. I turned to Michael, his bravado now replaced with a grim realization. Months of deceit unraveled before him, his charm now a weapon dulled by the truth. He opened his mouth, perhaps to launch a defense or an appeal, but I silenced him with a raised hand, a commanding gesture that spoke of authority and finality. "Save it," I said, my tone cutting through the air, leaving no room for negotiation. "This is not a negotiation, Michael. This is justice." His shoulders slumped, acceptance slowly weaving its way through his consciousness. He knew, as well as I did, that the game was over. I moved towards my laptop, the final act of this revelation waiting at the tip of my fingers. The incriminating email, loaded with evidence, was ready to be sent, a digital sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. I looked at Lisa one last time, searching for any remnants of the love that had once bound us together. Her eyes met mine, a blend of sorrow and a silent acknowledgement of the consequences she now faced. As my finger hovered over the send button, a moment of clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge or retribution. It was about reclaiming my life, taking back control from the chaos their infidelity had unleashed. With a firm resolution, I pressed down, watching the email travel across the digital ether, sealing their fates. The silence that followed was deafening, a heavy pause as my actions rippled through our shared world. I watched as Lisa's face fell, the finality of the moment sinking in. Her world, once meticulously curated, was now unraveling thread by thread. Michael, realizing the full extent of his exposure, looked away, unable to meet my gaze. In that moment, standing in the heart of the storm I had unleashed, I felt a conflicted sense of relief. The power was no longer in their hands. I was no longer a victim of their deceit but the orchestrator of their downfall. They would face their consequences, both personal and professional, and I would finally begin to heal from the scars their betrayal had carved into my soul. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I chose how the story unfolded, where I decided the paths I would take. With the seeds of revenge sown, the stage was set for the journey that lay ahead, a path towards rebuilding and ultimately finding peace. As I left the room, the doors closing behind me with a definitive click, I knew I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, armed with the knowledge that justice, though delayed, had finally been served. The sun gently pierced the kitchen window as I moved around the room, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the soft sizzle of breakfast on the stove. This was our sanctuary, the place where the day began in a rhythm of shared tasks and whispered plans. Lisa sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, a picture of domestic grace and familiarity. Her laughter echoed softly against the walls as she recounted a story from work, her eyes sparkling with a warmth I had come to cherish. Her presence was a symphony that played in harmony with the early morning light, the routine of our lives stitched together with threads of affection and unspoken promises. I leaned against the counter, watching her with a mixture of admiration and trust. As she moved, there was an elegance in her gestures that seemed to transcend the mundane, making every moment feel significant. I found myself caught in the simplicity of our shared life, the banter effortless, the connection deep. We sat across from one another, the table a shared altar of our union. As I reached for the toast, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence that sometimes crept in amid our conversations. It was a silence laden with comfort, not of things unsaid but of knowing each other so well that words were often unnecessary. The silence was where I found refuge and certainty, where the world outside faded into irrelevance. After breakfast, I kissed Lisa goodbye, heading to my office, a citadel of steel and glass where I wore the mantle of a successful architect. Here, I thrived, my creativity sculpting the cityscape, leaving a legacy in lines and structures. Work was demanding, but it was the anchor that kept me grounded. My colleagues and clients a testament to a life well-earned and respected. The day unfolded in meetings and plans, the hum of productivity a comforting backdrop to my thoughts. Yet it was Lisa's voice that lingered in my mind, her laughter echoing through the corridors of my consciousness. It was this life, this embodied perfection, that I was determined to protect, unaware of the storm that was gathering on the horizon. Evenings were reserved for family dinners, a sacred time where our children's laughter and stories filled the spaces between us. Around the dinner table, we shared our victories and tribulations, each meal a tapestry woven with love and shared history. It was during these times, amid the warmth of home and family, that I felt invincible, as if nothing could tarnish the world we had created together. As I watched Lisa interact with our children, her nurturing demeanor a constant reassurance, I marveled at her ability to balance her roles, her charm a testament to the strength and grace she carried effortlessly. She was an enigma wrapped in the guise of a devoted mother and wife, a woman who seemed to effortlessly keep the world at bay. Yet, as the days passed, I found myself pondering the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the unexplained absences, the fleeting glances she shared with her phone. I dismissed these thoughts as paranoia, a figment of an overactive mind seeking flaws where none existed. After all, wasn't our life perfect? Wasn't Lisa a paragon of trustworthiness and love? But the unanswered questions lingered, coiling like smoke in the corners of my mind, their presence insidious and pervasive. The once comforting silence that enveloped us now felt tinged with an unease I couldn't quite name, a prelude to a truth that remained just out of reach. I clung to the vision of our shared life, the image of Lisa's smile, our children's laughter, the dreams we had built together. I held on to these like lifelines, hoping they would anchor me amid the encroaching shadows. But with each passing day, the suspicion that nestled in my heart grew, a quiet rebellion against the certainty I had known. Time, with its merciless progression, brought with it a realization that the perfect life I had cherished might be nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our home, I found myself standing at the precipice of a revelation I wasn't sure I was ready to embrace. Yet, in the stillness of the night, as I lay beside Lisa, the woman whose presence had once been my refuge, I realized that to uncover the truth was to face the potential dismantling of everything I held dear. But I couldn't continue to ignore the signs, the whispers of doubt that had become too loud to silence. With a heavy heart and a resolve born of necessity, I knew the time had come to unravel the threads of deception and betrayal, to confront whatever lay hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. And in that decision, I took the first step towards reclaiming my reality, preparing to face the consequences that would inevitably follow. The change was subtle at first, a whisper in the quiet spaces of our days. Lisa's laughter, once so bright and genuine, now felt rehearsed, like a line delivered in a play. Her eyes, which I had always trusted to reflect the sincerity of her heart, now seemed distant, as if seeing further than the boundaries of our shared existence. I tried to ignore it, clinging to the warmth of our morning routines, the harmony of our family dinners, but the dissonance grew louder with every passing day. Lisa began to wear a new perfume, a scent both unfamiliar and alluring, leaving a trail of intrigue wherever she went. "Just something I picked up on a whim," she explained with a casual wave, but her smile didn't reach her eyes, and I found myself questioning the spontaneity of her choice. She started dressing up more often, her attire no longer matching the casualness of her outings, each ensemble meticulously chosen as if for an audience unseen. Her phone became an extension of her person, always in her hand or within reach, its screen lighting up with messages she guarded with casual but unwavering vigilance. At night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear the soft murmur of her voice from the living room, a one-sided conversation shrouded in secrecy. I told myself that it was work, her dedication to her career, but the doubts festered, pestering echoes in the quiet of the night. One evening, while reviewing my upcoming projects on my laptop, a notification popped up, a dinner reservation for two at an upscale restaurant, one neither of us had frequented. My heart caught in my throat, and I found myself staring at the screen, the cursor blinking accusingly against the time-stamped evidence. When I questioned Lisa casually about her plans for that night, she hesitated. "Just a dinner with an old friend," she replied, her voice casual, but her eyes darted away, betraying the fabrication. As weeks passed, her absences grew more frequent, attributed to networking events that seemed to multiply inordinately. Each time she left, I felt a growing void, an absence not just of her physical presence, but of the emotional connection we once shared. Our conversations became stilted, the comfortable silence that had once bound us now filled with unspoken questions and mounting frustrations. I longed to confront her, to demand answers for the shifts in her behavior, but a part of me clung to denial, afraid of what the truth might unravel. I placated myself with the belief that this was a phase, a temporary distraction that would soon pass, but the gnawing suspicion refused to be silenced. It was as if I was watching a play unfold, one where I was both audience and unwilling participant, forced to witness the unraveling of my own life. One Friday, she came home later than usual, a new glow in her cheeks and a hidden smile playing on her lips. She brushed off my inquiries with a breezy "work ran late," but the lingering scent of cologne, not her own, told a different story. It was then that I realized the magnitude of my suspicions, the dark truths that lay just beyond the curtain of my conscious thought. I began to take note of the details I had previously dismissed, the sudden calls she took in the hallway, the unexplained receipts crumpled in her purse, the way her eyes would light up at messages she would quickly tuck away. Each piece of evidence chipped away at the foundation of our life, revealing the cracks in the facade I had once taken for granted. The storm I had sensed on the horizon was now a tempest raging within me, a cacophony of emotions threatening to consume the calm I had cultivated over the years. To uncover the truth was to face the possibility of losing the life I cherished, but to remain in ignorance was no longer an option. In the solitude of my thoughts, I came to a decision. I would find out if my fears were unfounded or if the deception ran deeper than I dared to imagine. The shadows on the periphery of our world would have to be confronted, and with a heart heavy with apprehension, I steeled myself for what lay ahead. No longer content with half-truths and evasive answers, I prepared to lift the veil on the mystery that had invaded our lives, determined to reclaim the certainty and trust that had once defined our marriage. And as the night descended upon our home, I knew that come what may, the dawn would bring with it a revelation that would change everything. The decision had been made. I was stepping into a shadowy world I had once only read about, a realm where trust was dissected and intentions laid bare. As the days passed, I found myself honing skills I didn't know I possessed, the subtle art of observation morphing into a calculated strategy. It was no longer enough to suspect. I needed certainty. I needed proof. On a quiet afternoon, while Lisa was out for another meeting, I sat at my desk, the home office a sanctuary of solitude and determination. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve as I discreetly downloaded a tracking app onto her phone. The process was surprisingly simple, almost mundane, yet it marked a pivotal moment in my journey, a step towards unraveling the web of deceit that threatened to ensnare me. Each ping of the app sent a jolt through my system, a digital breadcrumb trail painting a picture of Lisa's whereabouts. The data, cold and impersonal, slowly began to form a narrative, one where truth and deception danced in a cruel parody of our lives. I watched as her travels took her places she had never mentioned, an elaborate geography of meetings that had nothing to do with business. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a series of messages, innocuous at first glance but laced with layers of meaning I couldn't ignore. They appeared on a shared device, overlooked in the haste of a forgotten password reset. Each line between Lisa and Michael was a microcosm of their clandestine world, filled with hidden desires and whispered confessions. The words, once abstract and meaningless, now carried the weight of betrayal, their intimacy a stark contrast to the life we had built together. The realization was like a punch to the gut, the air stolen from my lungs in a cruel act of revelation. Days passed in a haze, each message a needlepoint in the ever-growing tapestry of infidelity. Yet I knew I couldn't confront her, not yet. There was more to uncover, more pieces to fit into the narrative that was slowly taking shape. A mutual friend had invited us for brunch, an impromptu gathering filled with laughter and reminiscences. Amid the jovial atmosphere, I noticed the friend's uneasy glances and hesitant speech. The moment arrived when, under the guise of casual conversation, they mentioned seeing Lisa at an upscale cafe with a colleague. Oh, was that Michael? The question, tinged with innocence yet loaded with implication, stirred something deep within me. Yeah, I replied, attempting nonchalance, though internally, my heart raced. She's mentioned meeting him a few times for work. Our friend nodded, a hint of skepticism in their eyes. Well, they seem to be having quite a meeting, they remarked with a tight smile before changing the subject. That night, the confrontation replayed in my mind, each syllable dissected for hidden meanings. The implications were clear, the casual observation a window into the secrets Lisa had tried so desperately to hide. My mind churned with possibilities, the threads of suspicion weaving into a clearer picture of the facade that had masked the truth. The next day, as Lisa headed out, claiming another work dinner, I found myself drawn to our bedroom, compelled by an unspeakable urge. Her closet, an array of elegance and sophistication, held more than just her clothes. As I sifted through the hangers, my fingers brushed against a gift, its wrapping untouched, hidden behind her tailored dresses. My heart sank as I unwrapped it, revealing a delicate piece of jewelry, its design unfamiliar and yet profoundly telling. It wasn't the sort of gift I would have bought, and the absence of a note spoke volumes. With the box in hand, I stood there, a silent witness to the life I had been blind to, a life shared with someone else. The evidence, now undeniable, clawed at my insides, each discovery a bitter confirmation of my darkest fears. It was as if the pieces of a long-lost puzzle were finally sliding into place, forming a picture I had never wanted to see. Despite the storm that raged within me, a part of me felt oddly relieved. The uncertainty was receding, replaced by a steely resolve that would not be swayed. The truth was now mine to wield, a double-edged sword that could both destroy and liberate. With each revelation, I felt a chilling sense of empowerment, knowing that the time for confrontation was drawing near. The masquerade was over, the curtain drawn back on the play that had been my life. And as I closed Lisa's closet, the decision was made. Deception would no longer rule my world. Instead, I would take the reins of my destiny, ready to confront the shadows and reclaim what had been lost. The living room, once a haven of warmth and familial love, seemed to close in around me, its walls echoing with the ghosts of laughter that now felt like distant memories. The setting sun cast long shadows across the room, a fitting backdrop for the confrontation that was about to unfold. I stood on one side of the room, the evidence of betrayal like a quiet storm within my grasp, waiting to be unleashed. Lisa entered with the air of someone warned by the day's demands, her eyes seeking mine with a question unasked but understood. I watched her settle into the chair opposite me, the familiarity of her presence now tainted by the knowledge I bore. Her smile, once a balm to my soul, felt like an accusation, a reminder of the trust that had been shattered. "David?" she began, her voice gentle yet probing, an attempt to bridge the chasm that had widened between us. But I was not here for reconciliation. Not anymore. "We need to talk, Lisa," I said evenly, the calmness in my tone surprising even me. It was a tranquility born of purpose, the clarity of finally stepping into my truth. She hesitated, sensing the gravity in my words, her movements cautious, like one approaching a precipice. The silence between us stretched taut, a prelude to the inevitable unraveling of everything we had known. "About what?" she asked, though her eyes spoke of an understanding she was not yet willing to voice. I met her gaze, allowing the weight of the moment to settle between us. "About the lies?" I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the tumult beneath. "About Michael." Her reaction was instantaneous. A sharp intake of breath, a flicker of fear crossing her face before being masked by a veneer of composure. She looked away, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, seeking solace in the minutiae of distraction. But there was no avoiding the confrontation now, no turning away from the truth. She exhaled slowly, as though steeling herself against the tidal wave of revelation. "I'm sorry, David," she began, her voice a fragile thread in the charged air. I didn't mean for it to happen." I listened, the rehearsed cadence of her apology cutting through me like a knife. The sincerity I once believed in now felt hollow, a shadow of the love I had cherished. "Why, Lisa?" The question escaped before I could temper it, a raw plea for understanding, despite the resolve I had forged. Tears welled in her eyes, mirrors of her internal battle. I felt lost. We were drifting apart, and I needed to feel seen again, she admitted, her confession tumbling out, a cascade of regrets and unmet needs. Her vulnerability was palpable, a crack in the armor she had carefully constructed. Rage flared within me, tempered by a sadness I couldn't quite shake. The betrayal was a living thing, pulsing between us, demanding to be acknowledged even as it threatened to consume me. "And this is how you chose to do it?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. She nodded, her composure slipping further, tears now trailing unchecked down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to escape." Her words hung in the air, a testament to the fragility of human desires and the destruction they wrought. I watched her, the woman I had shared my life with, become a stranger before my eyes, her familiar features now obscured by the choices she had made. "What about us?" I pressed, my voice softer now, tinged with a sadness that seemed to permeate every corner of the room. "What about our family?" She looked up then, her gaze meeting mine with a mix of regret and desperation. "I still love you, David. I never stopped." The admission was a whisper, a plea for redemption I was not yet ready to grant. But love, I realized, was not enough to mend the fracture that had split our lives apart. It was not enough to erase the images of Michael and the life they had built in the shadows of our marriage. The hurt ran too deep, a wound that refused to heal. "I can't do this," I told her, shaking my head as the weight of her betrayal settled over me like an unshakable mantle. "I can't just forget." Her face crumpled, her tears now silent witnesses to the unraveling of our shared history. "I'll do anything to make it right," she whispered, reaching for my hand, a gesture that felt both familiar and foreign. But I pulled away, the act of final severance of what once was. "I need time," I said eventually, my voice barely audible above the sound of my heart breaking. It was a lie I told myself, a temporary salve to ease the immediate pain, knowing full well that the path forward was forever altered. The confrontation left us both raw, the air heavy with the unvoiced screams of dreams undone. As I turned away from Lisa, the woman who had been my partner and confidant, I felt the cold embrace of determination settle in my bones. This was not the end, I realized, but the beginning of a journey that would see justice served, a balance restored. And while the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, I knew that I would face it head-on, armed with the truth and a relentless drive towards reclaiming my life. As I stepped out of the living room, leaving behind the echoes of our confrontation, I understood that the next chapter was mine to write, the story far from over in the face of the consequences we would both have to face. In the days that followed our confrontation, the house seemed to breathe with an unfamiliar chill, the air heavy with the weight of unspoken words and shattered promises. Each morning I woke to the reality that the life I cherished was gone, replaced by the gnawing certainty of betrayal and the determination to reclaim my dignity. Lisa's presence was a ghostly echo, our interactions reduced to the civility of strangers. In the quiet of our once warm home, I found refuge in the solitude of my thoughts, plotting my course with a precision that surprised even me. The decision to seek retribution had come not from a place of vengeance but from the necessity of justice, a means to right the wrongs that had been so carelessly inflicted. The digital evidence I had amassed was a fortress of truth, each photo and message a brick in the wall of deception that I was ready to dismantle. I methodically combed through the data, cataloging each conversation and timestamp, building an incontrovertible case against Lisa and Michael. The task was clinical, devoid of the emotional tumult that had marked our confrontation. It was a cathartic exercise, each keystroke a step towards reclaiming my life. To aid in my endeavor, I reached out to an old college friend, a legal mind whose expertise in corporate law was as sharp as his integrity. He came to our meeting with a knowing glance, aware of the complexity of the task ahead. "David," he began as we settled into a quiet corner of a bustling cafe, "you're sure about this?" I nodded, the conviction in my voice unshaken. "Absolutely. I need to do this, for my peace and for my children." He nodded in understanding, his demeanor shifting to that of a strategist. "Then we'll need to be thorough. Evidence is key, not only about the affair but anything that can leverage your position in court." Together, we pored over the digital trail I had amassed, his legal insight guiding me through the intricacies of turning personal betrayal into a legal advantage. "We'll start with Michael," he suggested as we outlined our plan. "Expose his misconduct at work. It will weaken his position and indirectly strengthen yours." With newfound resolve, I set about executing our plan. I contacted a trusted private investigator to scrutinize Michael's professional conduct while discreetly installing surveillance in our home, concealing cameras and recorders in places both strategic and unobtrusive. Each step felt like a march towards reclaiming my autonomy, a battle fought not with anger, but with calculated determination. The discovery of Michael's unethical maneuvers within his company unfolded like a tragic play, a series of missteps that underscored the rot beneath his charismatic veneer. Internal emails and documents hinted at financial discrepancies, a web of deceit that extended far beyond personal betrayal. As the investigator relayed his findings, I felt a grim satisfaction knowing the truth would see the light of day. Meanwhile, I maintained the illusion of normalcy at home, the facade of a business trip providing cover for the surveillance operation I had initiated. The cameras captured images of a life I no longer recognized, their silent testament a crescendo to the evidence I would eventually reveal. Lisa's routines continued, her obliviousness to the machinations at play a bitter reminder of the distance between us. I watched her through the lens of detachment, the love I once held now replaced by an unfamiliar resilience, a shield against the wounds of the past. The surveillance revealed not just acts of infidelity but moments of solitude, where she seemed burdened by the choices she had made, her contemplative silences a testament to the echoes of a life unraveling. Each captured frame was a testament to the duality of her existence, a reminder of the complexity of human fallibility. The culmination of my plan approached with an inevitability that was both daunting and liberating. With the evidence meticulously compiled and the allyship of my legal friends secured, I was ready to expose the truth, a truth that would lay bare the intricacies of betrayal, offering no refuge to those who had wronged me. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the household slumbered under the veil of innocence, I took a moment to reflect on the path I had chosen. Revenge was a dish best served not with rage but with justice, a means to heal the wounds that had been inflicted upon my soul. The journey was far from over, but the roadmap was clear. Reclaim my life, protect my children, and bring to light the shadows of deception. With the clarity of purpose, I understood that the power lay in my hands, each decision a stepping stone towards a future where I would no longer be defined by the betrayal of others, but by the strength of my own convictions. The boardroom was a theater that morning, the usual buzz of anticipation replaced by a stifling tension. Colleagues shuffled in, unaware that today's meeting would be unlike any other, a reckoning veiled in the guise of corporate discourse. I stood at the front, my heart a steady drumbeat in my chest, masked by an air of professionalism I had honed over years of architectural triumphs. Michael sat among his peers, a picture of nonchalance, wholly ignorant of the storm he had summoned. His confidence, that practiced mask of charm, would soon be stripped away, revealing the duplicity beneath. I could almost feel the weight of the evidence in my pocket, the sheer power it held to dismantle his carefully constructed facade. As the meeting progressed, I allowed the usual discussions to unfold, the agenda a mere formality before the revelation to come. My fingers brushed against the USB in my pocket, a talisman of truth and impending justice. When the moment was right, I took a breath, grounding myself in the reality of what needed to be done. Before we conclude, I announced, my voice cutting through the air with authority. I have something to address, a matter of integrity within our ranks. The room shifted, eyes darting towards me, curiosity piqued by the gravity of my words. I locked eyes with Michael, watching as a flicker of unease crossed his features, quickly masked by a veneer of calm. It was the beginning of his undoing. In recent weeks, I've come across information regarding unethical conduct. I continued, allowing the silence to weave tension into the fabric of the room. Conduct that compromises not only the reputation of this firm, but the trust of every individual present. Michael's gaze hardened, his posture shifting defensively as murmurs filled the room. "David, surely this can wait for a more appropriate time?" he interjected, his tone a blend of forced composure and underlying panic. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "I'm afraid it cannot. This concerns all of us." With an almost theatrical flourish, I plugged the USB into the boardroom's projector, the screen illuminating with documents that detailed Michael's transgressions, emails, financial anomalies, and correspondence that painted a damning picture of deceit. Each slide was a nail in the coffin of his professional credibility. The room descended into a stunned silence, eyes darting between the screen and Michael, who sat frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and rising anger. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and the realization was palpable. "David, this is a setup," Michael spat, his voice rising in desperation. "You're trying to ruin me." I met his gaze evenly, the past months of deceit fueling a calm determination within. "No setup, Michael. Just the truth you've been running from." The air crackled with tension, the weight of my accusations hanging heavy. The board members exchanged hushed conversations, their collective judgment already swaying under the undeniable evidence. Michael rose abruptly, his chair clattering behind him, a wild look in his eyes as he grasped at excuses that crumbled before they were spoken. "You can't do this to me," he shouted, desperation breaking through his once smooth exterior. "I didn't do this, Michael." "You did," I replied, my voice ringing with the clarity of vindication. "Your choices brought us here." The meeting adjourned in a chaos of whispers and hurried exits, the scandal spreading through the corridors like wildfire. I watched as Michael stormed out, his bravado shattered, leaving behind the husk of a man who had once taunted the boundaries of trust with impunity. Later that day, as Lisa returned home, she found our joint assets frozen, The financial safety net we had built together yanked from beneath her feet. Her call came within minutes, panic lacing her voice, a stark contrast to the calm with which I answered. "What's happening, David?" she demanded, the veneer of her composure cracking under the stress of the situation. "Consequences," I replied simply, allowing the word to settle like a stone thrown into a pond. "Of choices made and truths ignored." Her silence was deafening, the full scope of her predicament settling over her like a shroud. The emails and messages I had sent to Michael's superiors and Lisa's social circle were already rippling through their lives. Each click and forward a reminder of the duplicity that had once thrived in shadow. The climax of my plan unfolded with an inevitability that was both satisfying and sobering. The power was mine now, a reclamation of control from the chaos that had threatened to consume me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden embrace, I stood at the precipice of a new beginning. In that moment, I felt not just the weight of revenge but the lightness of liberation, the knowledge that justice had been served with a hand both steady and resolute. The path ahead remained uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. With each step, I moved not towards revenge but towards the reclamation of my truth. A journey begun in betrayal but destined for something far greater. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, a testament to the new beginnings I yearned to embrace. With each breath, I felt the remnants of yesterday's shadows recede, their oppressive weight lifting as I stood on the precipice of a life unburdened by deceit. The storm had passed, leaving in its wake a clarity that filled me with a sense of purpose and liberation. The house was quiet, a sanctuary once more, echoing with the absence of conflict. Lisa was gone, her departure a necessary chapter in our story, a break that promised growth for both of us, albeit along different paths. Our children, thankfully, had been shielded from the worst of it, their innocence preserved as I navigated the tempest with deliberate care. In the kitchen, I busied myself with breakfast, the mundane task grounding me in the present. The clatter of dishes and the sizzle of eggs were sounds of normalcy, a rhythmic reminder that life, indeed, carried on. As I moved through the motions, my thoughts drifted to the future, a canvas yet untouched, filled with possibilities. My career was thriving, my architectural firm a bastion of creativity and innovation. The fallout from Michael's exposure had led to opportunities one had never anticipated, my reputation bolstered by the integrity I had steadfastly maintained. Each new project was a chance to leave my mark, to construct legacies from steel and glass, echoes of resilience and renewal. Yet, amid the flurry of professional triumphs, it was my role as a father that occupied my heart most. My children looked to me for guidance, their laughter and curiosity the anchors that tethered me to the present. Evenings were spent exploring parks and museums, their boundless energy a salve for the wounds left by betrayal. Together, we carved out new traditions, weaving a tapestry of memories that would sustain us through the seasons of change. It was during one such evening, as we huddled together watching a meteor shower, that I felt the stirrings of hope once more. The night sky was a canvas of stars, each streak of light a reminder of the vastness of the universe, and of the possibilities it held. My children, with their faces upturned, whispered wishes to the heavens, their innocence untainted by the trials of adulthood. Listening to their dreams, I found myself contemplating my own, long dormant amid the chaos of recent months. I imagined a future where trust was rebuilt, a new chapter where love could flourish, not as a replacement, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a revelation both daunting and exhilarating, the first inklings of a heart ready to open once more. Lisa and Michael, bound now by the consequences of their choices, existed in a world separate from mine. They faced their own reckonings, both personal and professional, the ripples of their actions creating waves that would shape their futures. It was a narrative I no longer sought to influence, content to allow the universe to chart its course. In moments of solitude, I reflected on the journey I had undertaken, from the depths of betrayal to the heights of redemption. The path had been fraught with challenges, each obstacle a test of my resolve and character. But with each trial, I had emerged stronger, my identity forged anew in the fires of experience. As the days turned into weeks, I began to contemplate the notion of forgiveness, not as an absolution for Lisa and Michael, but as a release for myself. Holding on to anger had been a necessary catalyst for change, but its weight was no longer mine to bear. With a quiet resolve, I chose to let go, to release the chains that had once bound me to a past marred by deceit. It was a decision that brought with it an unexpected peace, a serenity that allowed me to fully embrace the present. As I stood at the window, watching the morning sun cast golden rays across the landscape, I realized that life was a series of moments, each one a choice, a chance to mold the future with intention and grace. With newfound clarity, I set about crafting the life I envisioned, not as a reaction to betrayal, but as a creation of love and authenticity. The journey was mine to define, a path marked by resilience and hope, bound not by the scars of the past, but by the potential of tomorrow. And as I took the first steps towards this new chapter, I carried with me the knowledge that true strength lay not in revenge, but in the quiet determination to build a life worth living. The story was far from over, and with each page, I would write a narrative of growth, healing, and the inexorable power of moving forward.